welcome. This is track A, which is in your program to be moderated by John O'Brien. As you can probably tell, I am not John O'Brien. And we are supposed to have 3 panelists. At the moment, we have 2 in the room, so we will, what? I know that. Thank you, Bill. I'm still hoping that he shows up, but thank you. Yes. So we have, as panelists at the moment, we have Sriram Vrinda, who works for Oracle, and we have Jason Russler, who works for Vast Data. And our panel discussion is all about modernizing your data, new platforms, tools, and trends. And because I structured this as a somewhat informal panel discussion, I also decreed that it be a slide-free zone. And so do not try later on to go to the website and try and pull down these slides because there aren't any. Okay, so now that we've gotten that little piece out of the way, as you've probably learned, I'm Mary D. Ojala, and conference program director for this conference and a few others. So what I'm going to do, just sort of to get us started here, I'm going to ask our 2 panelists here to each of them tell you a little bit more about who they are, what their company does, and what their job entails. And after that, we will move into what they are thinking about the future. So let me start with you, Jason.
Sure. Is this thing on? Yes,
it is.
So yeah, I come from Vast Data. We specialize in high volume, high performance storage infrastructure, essentially. So we house structured and unstructured data in flash environments for relatively low cost, and we're very active in the AI and ML space because of the capabilities of combining structured and unstructured data on the same platform, along with a bunch of partnerships we have with folks like NVIDIA for doing GPU direct storage accesses. And so we're pretty well aware of a lot of things that are going on the ground these days in terms of storage infrastructure, as opposed to the higher level tools. And we accomplish this with a lot of recent technology. So there's a software-defined storage space that exists out there that this particular room probably wouldn't be super aware of, but we crossed over and came in sort of late in that SDS space and have been able to combine a whole lot of technologies in order to get the cost of flash really low and competitive. So now we have 300 petabyte environments out there housing storage all on flash, with the premise being that you don't want to tier storage, you don't want to have complicated data storage movement, and this is applied to unstructured data traditionally, but it's been applied to structured data in the last year or so as well. So, I could talk about it at length, because that's actually pretty much my job, but since I only have a couple minutes here, I won't. Happy to answer questions. And I think that's about the gist of it. I can go into details, but we can also discuss what the panel's about, which is
Sure.
Future tools.
Absolutely. Sriram?
Thank you. I'm a product manager with Oracle. So many of you would have heard about Oracle being a database company. But we do a lot beyond databases today. So we are part of the cloud story as well. So we have our own cloud called as the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So I'm basically from the database space. I used to work on the Oracle database technologies for more than 15 years. Now I'm with the MySQL HeatWave division, which is also a database. By the way, how many of you are aware that MySQL is from Oracle as well? If you can raise hands. So I see a couple of them already aware. Some of them are not aware that MySQL is from Oracle. So this is a good way to understand that MySQL is from Oracle. It's an open source database, but then we also offer paid versions of this, which is like the Enterprise Edition, which runs on premises and also on the cloud. So I deal with the cloud manageability aspects of it. So we have HeatWave, which runs on top of the MySQL engine, which is the online transaction processing engine, which is the InnoDB engine. So it runs analytics on top of this database, wherein you don't need to have a specialized database. If you look at other vendors, what they do is like you go for maybe a specialized OLTP system for your online transaction processing, and then you pick and choose an analytics engine wherein you need to do ETL, you need to actually send the data to some other database, or maybe you need to do some other artifacts of it. So you don't need to do that. You have the capability to do document storage, which is the replacement for the documents type databases. We have created in database JavaScript, JSON data type. All that you name is available within the MySQL system or the MySQL engine, and it runs on Oracle Cloud. So that's something that I do as a product manager. And then I also own the observability space from a database manageability, and that has been like my forte for the last 20 years or so. I have developed tools in Oracle for performance tuning and diagnostics. So we are trying to bring in all those tools into MySQL as well, so that you have a better understanding about observability. So I'm here to talk about these topics. If you have questions around observability, what are the modern trends that you see in observability space for monitoring and diagnostics, and also about MySQL as a database from an RDBMS standpoint, as well as from an analytics standpoint. Thank you.
So Jason, we're talking about the future, we're talking about new platforms. What are you seeing in terms of modernization, and what new platforms are you looking at?
There's a dichotomy here, and it exists at this table, and there are the cloud services, of course. And so in my company, we deal with infrastructure, which is very much on premises. And when you talk to a crowd like this and you say you produce something that exists on premises and that the software is there and that you access it there, they look at you like you sprouted a third arm. This is a space that's very much owned by, or exceed, at least in terms of mindshare, cloud, right? When you talk to consultants, when you talk to even customers, it's a cloud movement kind of effort. However, particularly in the advent of the AI/ML space, the volumes of data have gotten so huge in some respects. Actually, very often it's very smaller than most people think. But there's an element of unstructured data at any rate, which is just way too big to be cost effective in clouds. So and people can actually find themselves there without realizing it. One day their bill is so ridiculously huge, there's got to be a better way. So it's an everything old is new again type environment. Now I have a sort of a warped perspective there, because those are the sites that I see. Are the very, very high volume sites, people that have hundreds of petabytes or tens of petabytes that is just unmanageable in cloud environments. So the things that I see are, apart from government, which is its own world, we see lots of financials that have huge amounts of data that want it on site, and now are gearing for ML workloads. So this is everyone doesn't know how to do it yet. They don't know what they don't know, but they do need to future-proof their environments, and they need to understand that when they're ready, from a personnel perspective, when they're ready to attack this problem, that they in fact have the infrastructure in place. So that's one of the big concerns we're seeing right now. So that's something my company has positioned itself for. So, but in general, large volumes of data, dealing with data gravity. Where is the data coming from? Is it existing in the cloud? Do I move it? How do I not move it and do what I need to do here? Instead of having to move it. Those are the big problems. The tools that are out there to address it. Again, it's an everything old is new again type of situation. I think that we have this modern data stack, which looks very much like the old data stack with a bunch of new names. And that hasn't changed much, it doesn't seem to me. But certainly the data gravity problem exists. And the tools for dealing with that are, I mean, everyone knows them. I mean, you have your Iceberg, you have your MPP processing engines, and then you have your cloud. You can go to do things in Snowflake. You can go do things in Databricks. And that is the fight we see right now is we want to do this workload, we need to do it, and we need to figure out what the costs are going to be, and that's where all the uncertainty is coming from. That doesn't tell you what I think people are going to use. Certainly, I hope they use, in part, my company's solutions. But those are the problems they're trying to attack.
Sriram?
Okay, so I would actually agree with you in terms of being having a huge volume of data to deal with. There are people who are still thinking about whether should I move to cloud or not. And so this is where we've been very innovative. If you look at other providers, they probably provide a pointed solutions. If you want to move your data to cloud and you want something that is closer to your data center, so we have something called as the DRCC, which is called as the Dedicated Region Clouded Customer. So Oracle has been very innovative in terms of coming up with these kind of technologies wherein you give the data center a space to this company, and we will actually deal with the infrastructure part of it. So you might need to have a database for doing your data processing. So let me start with this. You need to have infrastructure, like compute, storage, networking, all that at one go. But then the need is you need to be faster because you need to innovate. The time to market is very important for me. If I keep doing this on premises with the current set of tools, then I won't be able to match up my pace. So what can I do to leverage these requirements? So this is where the dedicated region clouded customer comes into picture, wherein you get all the feature functionalities that are available in the cloud, but in your data center. So basically, I would agree that you have maybe compliance requirements. You might have data governance requirements. But then I still need to actually make use of AI and ML. But I don't need to actually build things on my own. I don't need to actually scratch it from the ground up. And then I can use readily available technologies. So if I have to move my data, maybe I might have to use data pipelines. I might have to use the new CI/CD version of it. So how do I get there? So this is where the clouded customer, dedicated region clouded customer comes handy. So we are also thinking about other customers who come back and give feedback. Okay, I like what you offer, but then we don't need the whole gamut of the entire cloud initiative or the cloud services that you offer. So as I said, we just need to have capabilities like storage, compute, and then network. And then on top of that, you can build your database and your applications, bare minimum. And then you need to have an observability tool as well. Right? So how do I actually measure whether I'm performing well or not? And how do I make sure that the operations team that run this data center, they are able to troubleshoot these issues on time or not? So these are the basic artifacts that you need to live with. And we are also thinking about coming up with a miniature version of this. We've already announced this, which is called as the compute clouded customer, which essentially gives you this bare bones when you have database, network, and related stacks, and including observability. So that's something that I see as a trend, and maybe other players also would kind of think about the same pattern and then implement this. So, yeah.
Yeah, pace is actually, I latched onto that. Pace is a big thing. Pace is what drives people to use the easy tools and hit the easy button. So, if you have a big problem and you have to engage as a large organization, your own IT infrastructure folks to solve it, that's a problem. That can take a long time sometimes. It's easier to whip out your credit card and just take the cost. And so I think VAST has been very keenly aware of that, and we've addressed this by making the software as simple as possible. It's a very low config environment. It's you can kind of dump it on the floor, not have it fight you, and yeah, configuration is a huge problem. So when you get it set up, you need performance. You need to get everything you can out of it, and you need to have the tools that you want to use that you're used to using. So So that's the big drive. You try to make things as low friction as possible, and you're always worried about cost. And that is the only attraction to having things on premises is the low cost. And perhaps, of course, you have data sovereignty issues and governance issues that you might want to resolve by having things on premises. But you absolutely have to make that easy in order to make it catch. And with the added bonus would be able to use cloud services on that environment. Wouldn't that just be awesome? That's the holy grail right there, is to be able to go into whatever you're used to. If you're a BigQuery user and you could access your 400 petabytes of data that was on site without having to pay for it in a hyperscaler, then that would be brilliant, right? That's the goal.
So are you finding, when we're talking about cloud, are you finding that most of your customers, most of the people you deal with, are in the process of migrating to the cloud? Have they already done that and are trying to just modernize how they're doing it, or are they resistant to a migration to the cloud?
Every big environment that's serious does a lot of everything. So they have their old Hadoop cluster that's sitting there that's doing MapReduce, for crying out loud, and then they have a bunch of a hodgepodge of Snowflake and some Amazon service, and so they tend to do these things very piecemeal. So which is great. I mean, they're optimizing. They do all their ETL. They move their small data sets into Snowflake or something. And they do their last mile. I mean, that's the real actuality of how people sort of do things, and they muddle along, and that's how they do it. So there doesn't really seem to be an environment where they have the killer app and they do everything with it, right?
So muddle along is a technical term for you then?
Yes.
Muddle along,
yes.
Okay.
That's what we all do. I mean, it does. Certain questions and comments are certainly welcome with respect to that and the environments you folks work in, because that's. And part of why I'm here is to hear things, your stories as well. So.
Yeah. So my take on this is like what we've seen is like when we deal with customers, they love all the features that we roll it out in the cloud. So, for example, in my space, we have MySQL HeatWave, which is available only on the cloud. So we have customers who are asking, can you make it available on premises? The reason why we can't make this available on premises is because we have a huge team. And you get a bug fix next day. If you are actually looking up for a feature that has to be fixed, we have a release cadence which actually goes through a release process. And by the time you apply a patch, it'll be 3 months. So that's a process that's been set into, right? An on-premises deployment, if you wait for a patch, you need to test it out, you need to roll this out. But in the case of cloud, if it is a fully managed service, you get the patch next day. You don't even realize the patch is out, and we update the systems on your behalf. So you just, with a click of a button, state that, okay, I have maintenance scheduled for maybe next Monday. Go ahead and do the maintenance or do the patching for me on my behalf, maybe 10 a.m. If you're a high availability customer, if you have systems that are highly available, we do rolling updates, and you get patches that are applied automatically without you knowing it. And because it is rollable, your business critical applications still continue to run. So that's a key artifact that customers are considering when moving to cloud. And yes, so most of them are like in the POC phases and trying to explore new features. Like, we talk about Gen AI, ML. So this is the need of the day, right? So we can't actually, have customers come and deploy this on premises, and then we kind of tackle individual needs. So this is like basically a generic stuff that we offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, having things managed in the cloud is actually the point. I mean, there are hidden costs to that. Just because you don't see the patch happen doesn't mean it wasn't critical and happened in a timely manner. But not having to think about it is a big deal. So, and that's something that folks that do things on premises really have to keep in mind and think about. In terms of their agility. So we work with some organizations that are hyper agility, hyper agile in their environments. So meaning they have very large data centers. And when you walk in there and you say you need something done, it is absolutely done, like, that day. It's crazy that some of these environments, they tend to be financials. But unless you have that agility, you can't compete with the cloud. So as someone that does things on premises as an organization, you have to have that agility if you're chief data officer is going to use your stuff, because your chief data officer has their own budget and they don't care. They're gonna go get their stuff from a hyperscaler rather than you. So as a company like mine, we have to maintain agility, and we have to be able to support that kind of agility, and we do. I mean, it's a new company, and we do really well in that space. So that is one of the advantages of the cloud, so that we have to deal with.
Well, speaking of budgets, because, of course, I know that everybody in the room has an unlimited budget for what you do, right? Right? Oh, maybe not. But what I've been hearing is from the CEO level, that C-level, that C-suite is coming to IT and saying, your budget will now be 100% for AI because we need AI. Now, mind you, they probably have no clue about what that actually means, but the buzzword is, well, you have to have AI to succeed. You have to invest in Gen AI. So what are you seeing is this idea that the C-suite just wants AI for whatever reason they want AI, and diverting the budget to it, is this something that you are also seeing?
A little bit. I think that most of those suites have wisened up, in the last 6 months or a year. And what I mean by that isn't that they're taking their foot off the gas. It's that they have a little bit more idea of what it means to their environments, and that means being ready for it. Doesn't mean having it done. It means being able to accept that workload when they get it, and when they have the staff, and when they can on-ramp that, and being AI ready, in some sense, means that you are able to deploy the tools you need to deploy when you need to. And that means having your storage footprint exists. That means having your compute, available. You understand how you're going to do that, and you understand the workloads. 90% of a Gen AI workload is data prep. It's just data. It might not be all your personnel time, but in terms of just what's consuming your budget and what you're doing, it's dealing with large amounts of data and moving it. I mean, you're talking about time to market. I need to get stuff to market, and I need to have an infrastructure that I can get things to market with in time. Sometimes it means just getting it done at all. Between now and the heat death of the universe, you have to have that infrastructure in order to get things done, and that is being understood. So,
it is being understood.
Yes,
that's good to hear. Yeah, absolutely. Sriram, what?
Yeah, so we are also dealing with a couple of customers that are considering new features that we've developed. Like, for example, so we were the first to roll out AutoML, which came out of Oracle Labs, which is integrated with the HeatWave service. ML, as you see, it can be used for many use cases. We had a talk yesterday, which can be used for anomaly detection or maybe kind of prediction. So if you're a data infrastructure guy, so if you want to predict your capacity, like, am I going to run out of CPU, or am I going to run out of storage, I can do predictions using AutoML. The other thing is, if I can do anomaly detection. Is there an anomalous user from a security standpoint who's kind of trying to spook into my system? So these are all IT-related stuff. But this can be easily expanded to other industry verticals, like maybe healthcare or maybe manufacturing and things like that. So customers are really seeing the potential of this, and then they want to try out and spend more in this space, so that along with this, if the icing on the cake is the generative AI, which we kind of recently rolled out along with this AutoML capabilities, wherein today, if you look at Gen AI, you would need a GPU, which is a highly powerful system, and you need to spend a lot of money. So what if I have a capability that actually allows you to do Gen AI from within the same ecosystem, from within the database itself? So that's what we are kind of trying to roll out. We've already announced this. So we have a RAG capability from within the MySQL HeatWave service itself, and we are dealing with a couple of customers who are doing POC, wherein you can bring in your documents, store it within the database itself, train the model using our own AI agents, and then using the AutoML capabilities, you get the best of breed, right? You can get anomaly detection, and also you can ask the chatbot asking, okay, is there an anomalous behavior? Tell me the anomalous user. Or maybe you can ask, was there a claim for an insurance that this guy has claimed maybe 3 months ago or maybe a month ago? What is the user pattern? So it goes both hand in hand. So seeing a lot of interest because this is like one-stop shop and your data never leaves the database. You don't need a third-party system. If you look at the Gen AI space, you now need to hook it up to maybe some other open source systems, right? This feature allows you not to go out. Everything is in-house, and security is like a prime concern to many, folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, governance is a big deal to folks. So the way we're approaching the generative AI problem or the AI problems in general is, as I mentioned, VAST creates a storage system that houses structured and unstructured data. And that is important because all of these workloads involve both of those things. And so since we're talking futures, some of the things that we've been working on are that we should be releasing about this time next year. Our pub subsystem and housed in this close. I could sit here and tell you what the architecture looks like. The way VAST looks on the ground is it's a whole set of flash arrays, and then it's a whole set of compute hosts, and they're housed on a very high-speed network. And the idea being you have this very, very tight coupling between data and storage. That's neat because we can take Kafka. We can re-implement it in C. It's not Java. And re-implement those and glue this to the environment. So imagine having a data stream, a pub subsystem, dump a bunch of data into the system and have it occupy a table immediately. That's it. You're done. There is no other step, at least. So you want to reduce data engineering. That's the idea. Also, imagine having the ability to detect that stuff as it's coming in and to trigger functions, and then have those execute. So what we're building right now, and one of the things that we think is going to be very, very successful, is the ability to have what is essentially a AI ML programming environment in a box. Essentially, your entire pipelines can be housed in it. Your entire pipelines can, involve external parts as well, since the pub subsystem is there, and all the protocols are supported. So as he was mentioning, the pipelines, and reducing data engineering and having everything exist in the system, as it is to avoid having to move things yet again, because all that pipelining is a big part of the problem in a lot of these environments. So I think it's simplicity, trying to get all this stuff kind of condensed down into a simple set of concepts that you can then work with. And the ecosystem right now is a little bit overwhelming, and that's a lot of what companies like ours are trying to address.
Let me follow on to that, because I'm wondering, is coding dead?
No.
Is Gen I and some of the stuff you're describing, is that going to eliminate the need for coding?
I don't know if you, go ahead and.
Yeah, so I think we need to actually train the model, right? So who is going to train the model? So you need to have developers who can write the code. And then what if I have a security issue? For example, I was talking to someone yesterday. If I have an AI chatbot, and then if I ask for the date of birth of an employee, and if the chatbot gives the date of birth, so it is not a good idea, right? It's a security flaw. Yeah. So how do I deal with such kind of issues? So I need to have a smart system that tells the AI engine to give data to whomsoever is really reliable to read that data, right? If I go to an HR system and ask for such a data, then how do I do that? So this is where the training model and appropriate security control is pretty important, and developers play a key role in terms of developing such kind of systems. You would see a lot of such models coming out, but then are we really secure in this world? And that's why people are kind of reluctant to send the data out to an open LLM model. So in-house agents are something that you would see, and then how do you do that? So you need to have technologies that enables you to do that, and maybe making use of this, maybe you can send the data to a lakehouse, like what he was mentioning. So how do I take the data, put into another store, and then reprocess it? All that requires some element of coding, and it is still going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, AI is not magic. In fact, it's actually pretty ham-fisted sometimes when you see the sausage being made. I make ChatGPT code for me all the time. It's like and that works for a lot of the things I have to do. I'm also one of my hobbies is flying. I'm a private pilot, but I asked it to calculate density altitude for me once, and it gave me the way wrong answer. it was awful, right? Now, that's not
That,
what
that
it's
could be
designed.
really dangerous.
It can, right? And so, it's a good example of something that's dangerous and the kinds of things you have to avoid. RAG can help with that. There's all kinds of other ideas for dealing with specific knowledge areas when you're asking a general LLM, like in that case. But you have all your data problems, you have your data prep problems, you got to make sure your data is not poisoned, you got to have just all those things, and then you have to have a model, which is not settled science, right?
Absolutely.
Someone's making these things. That's going to go on forever. I mean, the singularity didn't just happen. There's a lot of work there that has to be done.
Let me also say that if any of you have questions, please interrupt us. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I walked in just as you were saying, keep it simple, stick it on Flash. And I wonder if you could expand on that. Are you talking about within storage systems, or is it an architectural principle for large applications?
Both. I mean, having things on, the big problem with Flash, of course, has always been expense. I mean, that's it. That's why people don't put everything on there. If you can get the costs down to something that's competitive with a spinning disk, then you win across the board. Not just because it's more performant, because it is, and maybe perhaps as an artifact of it being performant, it's predictable. You don't have giant, spinning disk farms with heads seeking, and then one day you just do one seek too many and the whole system falls over. Those types of dynamics are sort of eliminated with Flash. You could be much more predictable about, what tomorrow's going to bring, right? There's also your data is only as valuable as it is available. So, it's great that you just tiered a bunch of stuff off to S3 or whatever, but on a spinning disk farm. But, what would you do if you could have access to all that at once and, analyze all that all at once or train all at once with it? That's the premise. So, your data is valuable, and, and if you can have access to all of it at the same time at high speed and low cost, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah, because I think that access to all of it at the same time at low cost, that's the interesting assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Most people that use Flash, like if you use it in Amazon, it's locally attached.
Uh-huh.
So it's an exercise for the reader to make it accessible to the entire application unless it's embedded inside something.
Right. So I think that we, in the AI and ML space, VAST partners with a lot of a new breed of AI cloud provider that are coming up. But in fact, I hesitate to mention them because I can never remember which ones I'm supposed to be able to talk about or not. Some of them are kind of creepy. But there's a bunch of them. There's several. And VAST is involved with almost all of them for this exact reason, right? For this sort of cost, performance, benefit. Most of that workload is, when you're talking about huge amounts of data, is going to be typically unstructured. It's going to be images. It's going to be videos. It's going to be very high volume, high frequency sensor data, stuff like that. That's going to be dumped in these systems. And so that's NFS hooked up to a NVIDIA SuperPod or whatever they're calling it these days. Something changed recently. And VAST is able to support those workloads. We are SuperPod certified. NVIDIA is a partner. And that's GPU Direct. That is an extremely fast, low latency interface from a VAST cluster that's all Flash pipelined into these GPU clusters and keeping them fed. And that's, it's great that you can store it all and you can get to it. You have to be able to deliver it as well.
Yeah. Other questions from the audience? Or comments? Or where do you think stuff is going in your organizations?
Well, I mean, what are footprint sizes in here in terms of your respective environments? Are you dealing with terabytes of data? Are you dealing with hundreds of terabytes, petabytes? Don't know. Excel spreadsheets.
Why don't you phrase that as a, raise your hand if you're in this.
Yes, sure. Let's do it like that.
Yeah.
100 terabyte data set.
Raise your hand if you're in there. Okay, we've got two.
Okay.
Next.
All right. Petabyte data set.
Petabytes.
Yeah, one.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. I mean, I could ask you tens, hundreds. Okay.
We finally got him not to raise his hand. Okay, then. Okay, for the rest of you, is it that you don't know or you're not willing to share with us?
Don't know.
Smaller.
Uh-huh.
I
What's
think you
your-
may have started too high on this one.
What are you
Let's
doing
try
with it?
smaller.
Is it BI, or are you doing some training? What are you doing with it? Just BI.
Just BI.
That's just BI. It's BI.
Yeah, we shouldn't say just, should we? No, that's,
It's not entirely dissimilar, so to data prep. So, no, I won't get any more specific in terms of my questions for you. Maybe later.
yes?
So, in our experience, the challenge for large companies to implement generative AI is not around the generative AI. That's sort of a commodity. You can sign up online with an API and OpenAI in your business.
Absolutely.
And the challenge is in the vertical application. They don't have the ability to build a vertical, functionally specific application. How are your organizations dealing with that lack of expertise?
For my part, it's easy. We don't. I think if we're talking about folks, we're talking about folks that are creating the model. So if you already have a pre-trained model, you might be doing some RAG or something else to keep it current and involved. So that is one problem. But you're talking about higher order applications accessing those APIs and making sense. Is that's what you're referring to?
Solving the functional business problem for the company.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, is this a solution in search of a problem?
So how do you store your data? Is it in the form of a PDF, or how do you store your data? How do you want to train the model, or what kind of?
We deal with store MS Office PDFs.
Right. So what we do is, yeah, so we have a lake house with MySQL HeatWave, wherein you can dump the data into an object store or maybe.
But that's not what I'm talking about. That's sort of a IT functional.
Right.
What I'm talking about is knowing how to build a competitive intelligence application, knowing how to build a pharmaceutical drug research application. It's the application is the lacking, is where I see the
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's precisely what I mean when I say that folks are getting prepared for this stuff, because they're starting to understand the mechanics of the problem. But that expertise in terms of really getting value out of it and having that avalanche come that is coming, yeah, I mean, it's just those people don't exist in mass yet. And if you're young and learning, that's probably what you should do.
How about if you're old and still learning?
No, you just give up.
I mean, I don't think we need to get so ageist here. Come on.
I just turned 50, so I'm pretty sensitive. So.
I'm with Oracle. I'm with the gentleman out there speaking about HeatWave, and we do have an ecosystem of partners who are very industry specific. So, you could say, hey, Patty, I'm in the transportation industry. Where's the partner that has implemented your solution for these types of use cases? So that does exist, right? I am.
I love it when connections
you.
happen in the room. This is wonderful.
Yes.
Looking ahead, because we are kind of future-oriented here, we've been talking about emerging technology. So just let me ask you to look in your crystal balls and what's the most exciting emerging technology that you think we would be talking about at this conference next year? Let me start with Sriram.
I think it would be about, again, the same data volumes. How do we kind of, come up with examples? Like today we are talking about how to solve a use case using generative AI. Maybe we'll see more examples in terms of how companies did solve their problems using generative AI and also using, solutions that are out there. People today are doing probably POCs or proof of concepts. We'll get to hear more from you folks how you kind of were successful and what worked out very well and what did not work out, and what are the tips and techniques to learn. That's the thing that I would see in the next year.
I'm going to get a little existential and say I think we're going to be talking a lot about legal matters this time next year, honestly. So I think that what goes into training models is going to be a big contentious deal. There's going to be governance and software that gets built around that. For instance, if you train a model and it infringes, we have two things. We have you train a model and it does something stupid. You need to go back and figure out why that happened in the data set or whatever. You need to be able to access that data set precisely as it was when that model was trained. And tools and techniques around that are certainly going to be a big deal. But that's also true for the governance environment. That's true for dealing with was this infringing stuff in the model when this model was created and produced this result. I think we're going to be talking a lot more about that.
Or what happens when your chatbot misinterprets corporate policy and gives bad information to a customer. And we've had a couple of stories about that I would pretty much qualify as horror stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I crashed my plane because I.
Right.
Well, that one, or I was really thinking of Air Canada, where their chatbot gave incorrect advice to a passenger about buying a bereavement ticket, and that was did not turn out well for Air Canada. Let's just say that.
Yeah, to add to that, I provided an example, like if you ask the chatbot, what is your date of birth, maybe that's where we are today. Maybe the systems would be advanced, wherein you probably end up asking a question like, where did I go for college? At what year did I graduate? So we probably want to actually solve such kind of problems, can't hack the, LM model by using some weird kind of questions. So these kind of things would come up. And as you said, I agree with you in terms of, governance and all these security related issues would kind of crop up, and we probably would try to solve or see more such kind of solutions or maybe scenarios around that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Beth mentioned this morning in her keynote speech was that we might run out of data to fuel all of these models in another 3 years, which seemed to me like a very short timeline. Is that possible? It seems like we also keep creating data. So will we run out? And what do we do when we run out?
I think, that's possible certainly in specialized areas, right, where less data even exists. We always talk about huge amounts of data. This gets talked about a lot, hundreds and hundreds of petabytes. And that does exist in a lot of environments, but all of Wikipedia in a zip file is only 200 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that sort of comparison, right, that you can make, So what is all this stuff? It's all camera data, it's all sensors coming off of cars, it's all, and there is mountains of it. But maybe there are very niche areas where AI could be extremely useful, where the data doesn't yet exist. It's its own revolving ecosystem of producing its own data.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. Sriram?
Yeah, maybe security for AI is another important aspect, as I say, right? So even if you run out of data, like I maybe give an example for observability, right? If I want to look at log data, so you're not stopping there. Mm-hmm. You still need to actually look at the log traces. A new set of data is going to come.
Right.
So how do I actually, get rid of that problem? We cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some data that's going to continue to be created just because of the way systems work.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we are almost out of time for this session, so if anybody has a final comment or question, we would love to hear from you in the room. And with that, resounding silence, let me thank our and they'll be around for a bit if you have other questions that you want to talk to them about privately. Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming.
Oh, thank you.
And the next session will start at 11:45.